Welcome to the AP Cast, episode 7 with Phil and Alex. Let's get it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AP Cast. It's me, your boy Phil. Alex rocking with me as always. We're back for another episode of the AP Cast, rounding out the staff on for the Raiders. We've had a couple of really important hires that have happened. Luke Getsy, the gentleman in the background, hold on, let me take this out again so you can see his face. That is your new offensive coordinator. And you may not know a lot about Luke. That's where we come in to give you a little bit of help. I wasn't wowed by it right away, but as I've dug into it and done my homework on him, started to look at what players he's have said about him, the success that other players have had with him, it's not so bad. And then we got treated to more defense. Mike Caldwell was signed today to be the linebackers coach, replace AP at his job, and to be the run game coordinator. And we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. Alex, how you doing over there? You've been awful quiet and spooky back there.
I've been very good, Phil. Been very good. How are you doing?
Outstanding. Let's get into this. Where would you like to start?
Well, where I want to start is neither of the things that you said, and it doesn't directly have to do with the Raiders. It does. And that's I want to start from the very beginning of this, and that is the Kingsbury thing. That is the Raiders, the deal with Kingsbury seemed to be done, and then it just wasn't. And that naturally had a lot of Raider fans disappointed, but not because it was a bad look for the Raiders, which, to some degree it is. But they were more upset because Kliff Kingsbury, this name, they were so close to having this big name, Kliff Kingsbury, then it was all gone. And Raider Nation really wanted Kliff Kingsbury. And it's not because they didn't want Kliff Kingsbury because they could tell you a lot about him. They wanted him because he's a big name, and it's a name that they all knew. Guy who was a head coach in the NFL, and that that allures fans because most of the time fans don't do extensive research on people. So I want to touch on Kliff and what not hiring Kliff, like what that means and what it would have meant if they did hire him. So let's talk about Kliff for a second. Kliff Kingsbury, I know a lot of Raider Nation very disappointed in this. I'd say almost all of Raider Nation is really disappointed about this. Kliff Kingsbury is a guy, the myth far exceeds, reality. Far exceeds reality. Where Kliff Kingsbury has gone, there really has not been that much success. And this really starts with Arizona when Kliff Kingsbury was hired and, he brought in his guy at quarterback and he was able to do all these things. Overnight, it seemed as if the receiving corps in Arizona became the most prominent part of the entire Cardinals roster. I mean, they got they obviously made the big trade for D-Hop. They had Rondale Moore. This was before Hollywood. They eventually signed AJ Green. AJ Green was already a little bit older, but as reliable as they come nonetheless. And they were having all these guys, and to the point, Greg Dortch, who he's not a big name by any means, but he was like the wide receiver 7. And when people were getting injured and Greg Dortch had to step in, he was phenomenal. So yeah, and then that's the passing game. And it wasn't a bad offense, but it just wasn't as good as it should have been. And by all accounts, it should have been great. And the importance of having your quarterback, the guy, you have the number 1 overall pick, and it's the guy whoever you want, whoever you believe best, runs your offense. And Kliff was so high on Kyler for that reason, that he believed he could do that. And Kyler wasn't necessarily bad. I believe he won Rookie of the Year that year. Was that was 2019 where he won it over Jacobs, I'm pretty sure. So he was pretty good. And he still didn't elevate the offense as Kliff expected, as everybody else expected. And the run game was not much better. The run game was worse. And he underachieved by all accounts at Arizona with what he was supposed to do. And then he goes to USC last year. Caleb Williams, he didn't have a terrible year, but by all accounts, he took steps backwards. That's working with Kliff. it seems like wherever Kliff goes, it's not that players are bad or teams are bad wherever Kliff goes. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there's an expectation, and that expectation is never met wherever Kliff goes. And it would probably be the same with the Raiders, who, again, have all these offensive pieces, and just like they've been doing since last year, the year before, they've been underachieving. You have to imagine that would just happen again, because why wouldn't it? That's the pattern. There's nothing about Kliff other than the name that should attract fans to him. And that's what I wanted to talk about before we talk about Getsy. And I'll let you start with Getsy because I just had a monologue about Kliff.
Oh, hey, it was spirited and I like it. And you want to talk, and Kliff, look, everybody's not meant to be a Raider. And if he was really, he did what was best for him. He got to a situation in Washington where he's probably going to be able to select Caleb Williams and show that it was his bad. It was his bad instead of Caleb's bad. Or maybe perhaps you'll see that Lincoln Riley, while we used to think of him as a QB whisperer, the defenses of college had to him and exposed him for what it is his limitations are. And a lot of his limitations in his system is a lack of checks, hot routes, and adjustments. It's a basic offense with basic reads that go all the way in progression the same way, don't change. And there's no short yardage adjustments to anything.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Least of all the blitzes. And while Caleb Williams is a lot of things, one of his defensive recognition and his blitz recognition is frightening. That is the one thing that I say that he doesn't do well. And if he has to start adjusting his own protections, and granted, his line last year was a little bit more compromised than the year before. The wide receiving core wasn't as good as it was the year before, even though the only real piece they were missing was Jordan Addison. That's a pretty large piece considering what he was able to do at the pro level this year. That's a lot of excuses to say that Caleb Williams had a down year and did not look as good as he did last year without Kliff Kingsbury. That's all I have to say about Kliff, because as Antonio Pierce said, we don't talk about people who are not Raiders because they don't matter. He can go do whatever the hell he wants in Washington while they try to revive that situation, which is in an interesting state. He's got some pieces that would work well. He's got his pick at one of the top two quarterbacks in the draft, so it's really going to come down to what it is that they do at number 2. But that brings us to Luke Getsy, and as I started out, you had an interesting stat about what Justin Fields' accuracy was really truly like, and I'll leave that to you. But we can talk about his stretch at Green Bay, and I believe that was under Matt LaFleur, and he's the first coach to get Davante Adams to the Pro Bowl in 2016. And then in 2020 and 2021, when he was the passing game coordinator, Davante toned for almost 2,800 yards, 2,800 yards. I'd have to go back to look specifically for it. I know one year was 1,500 something, and the other one was 13 something. So I'd say it was almost 2,900. And crazy, and 28 touchdowns, 15 and 13.
Yeah, so the whole reason why I started with Kliff, of course it was so, Raider Nation can stop complaining about the Kliff thing, but also because it was important to establish what the Raiders lost before we talk about what the Raiders gained with Getsy. So that's why I brought up the Kliff thing. But yeah, Getsy's resume is really, even with Chicago, it really isn't that bad, and actually with Green Bay it was outstanding.
Yeah, and moving through that they want both Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams spoke very highly of Luke Getsy and about the fact that he made it fun to come to work, and he actually worked under Edgar Bennett, I believe, as the offensive coordinator. So having them being able to work together in Las Vegas with Davante Adams and a quarterback of their choosing, hopefully will come and have a much better result than it did in Chicago. where they had the quarterback of their choosing, but limited pieces around him, and the situation just came to a head, and they felt like they needed to go in a different direction.
Yeah. So Getsy in Green Bay, I said that his resume was outstanding, and I really don't think Raider Nation grasped the severity of it. You mentioned that when Getsy was on the staff, he got Davante Adams to his first Pro Bowl. How about when Getsy was the passing game coordinator in Green Bay, which was 2020 and 2021? He got Davante Adams to his first team All Pro, then got Davante Adams to his second first team All Pro, back to back. How about that? Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. We all know that, 4-time MVP now. Aaron Rodgers was an MVP in 2020. He was an MVP in 2021. Again, these are the same 2 years with Getsy there in Green Bay as the passing game coordinator. And that's big because obviously Aaron Rodgers is the passer. 2020, Marquez Valdez-Scantling leads the entire NFL in yards per reception with 20.7. This is, again, all Getsy being the passing game coordinator. And, we can, again, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, but these things, they didn't happen like this, without him. And of course, Aaron Rodgers won 2 MVPs before, but not like this, not back to back, and not under the same guy like that. And it was just, and everybody thought the year before, 2019, everybody was just like, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers is done, like he's got nothing left. And then he comes out and he does all this, back to back MVPs again. Davante Adams, two first team All Pros of his career, back to back MVS, leads the league, yards per reception. I mean, it's really a great resume.
It honest and truthfully is, and as you say that, it's that just listening to it is like, wow, that is insane. Like, that's crazy. They really honestly and truly did that. It really puts to mind. And then when you look at the Chicago years as the offensive coordinator over there, they ran the ball a lot. They were second in the league in rushing attempts and yards this year, and although they had 100 attempts from 3 different guys, 2 running backs and the quarterback. And while the last 2 years the quarterback has been leading the team in rushing, you can't argue with the numbers and the way they go about their business of running the football and how lethal they are when they actually commit to doing it. They ran us out of Chicago and allowed a D2 quarterback to come in who's making his first start and shred what was a good defense at that point, had been a good defense up to the.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then it was, you go back and you watch the tape, because it's one thing to take all of the Twitter GM experts and everybody who said, I watched the tape, I know what happened, and you see a lot of receivers that are open, a lot of missed opportunities. And that was a problem that we had with other quarterbacks, with pretty much every quarterback that's not going out there and getting it done. It's missed opportunity. And you don't want to have that. And again, you can blame it on some of the lack of talent, lack of an offensive line, cohesion, any form of stuff. But guys are wide open doing jumping jacks, and jumping jacks is an ugly thing to see on the field from your wide receiver.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And so Getsy in Chicago, there's 2 things I want to say. Number one is, you'll often hear when Raiders media tries to be positive about the Getsy thing, it's always they were so good rushing. And fans are quick to point out, well, Justin Fields, he's so athletic, of course, that they got this many rushing yards. But you said it yourself that there was not 1, not 2, but 3 people. One is Justin Fields, so 2 different running backs. Who? What was the stat you said?
Had over 100 rushing attempts.
Yeah, so it's going around, and the big thing about that I really want to say is, when is the last time Chicago? And this is we're talking before Getsy. This isn't even just Getsy's era. That Chicago had a running back that they could give the ball to, and it was a good run back. Jordan Howard. I know he had a 1K yard season, and then he left, and then his career was done. He's not even playing in the NFL anymore. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. That might be untrue. And so how good really was Jordan Howard? But that's before Getsy, so that's really neither here nor there. But it's really just to say that they have not had a running back that they could keep giving the ball to, where we look at a guy and we say, he should be getting all these yards. Because what are we talking about? Foreman? Are we talking about Foreman should have gotten all these yards? Foreman should have ran the way he ran at the end of the year against the Raiders in any of these games that came after. Are we going to sit and say that Foreman should have been that good because he's Foreman? We're not going to say that. That's ridiculous. We're not going to say that about Cohen. Was Cohen the running back last year? No, it's probably David Montgomery still.
Yeah, it was Montgomery.
Yeah, we're not even going to say that about David Montgomery because before this year, everybody was like, oh, okay, David Montgomery went to the Lions. Who cares? David Montgomery's name was fizzling out ever since his rookie year, where there was the whole Montgomery versus Jacobs thing, and then that fizzled out every single year because fans were just out on Montgomery. So we can't even bring him into this. And it doesn't matter which running back you want to say, especially this last year. This last year, especially, it was so. Who is it? Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert is a guy everybody likes to watch, but he's Khalil Herbert. I mean, he's a third down back if we're being honest, and he's an okay runner. I don't want to put down Khalil Herbert, but if we're gonna sit here and say Khalil Herbert is a guy you should expect 1,000 yards out of, or anything relatively close, you're lying to yourself. And that Getsy made runs happen with that. And the second thing, that took a long time for the first thing. The second thing is when we talk about the passing offense being bad a lot of the time, I'm not going to talk about how I feel about Justin Fields because we will be here all day. We will be here all day. But I'm just going to say this. In 2022, Justin Fields, bottom 5 in the league in on-target percentage per Pro Football Reference. Bottom 5. He was top 5, in bad pass percentage. And those are two different things. Bad passes well beyond off-target. And he took steps forward in 2023. He really did as a passer, Justin Fields. But he was still bottom 5 yet again in bad throw percentage this last year. In on-target percentage, He was bottom 5 in on-target percentage this past year. And so it's what you said, that the receivers are open oftentimes, waving their arms around. And sometimes it's Justin Fields can't find them. And sometimes there are 4 quarterbacks, sometimes 3. I believe in 2022, there was only 3 quarterbacks who have a lower percentage of on-target throws than Justin Fields. So what are you going to do? What are you supposed to do as the offensive coordinator? Are you supposed to run it a lot because your quarterback is inaccurate? Well, that's what they did. You just said it yourself. 3 different players with over 100 rushing attempts. So he did that. So if that's what you want to say, you have to do that when your quarterback can't pass. Cool, he did that. So what's really the knock on Getsy?
And when as you talk about that, and you go back and you look at the season when they were trying to throw the football, they were experiencing no success and looked like they were destined for the first and second pick in the draft due to being so terrible. But once he started handing the ball off, the Bears started winning games, and they came, I believe, they were within a game of making it to the playoffs themselves. Which, if for all of those quick to discredit him and say what it is that he did and didn't do, to take that team that that was struggling offensively and turn it into something where I told you Justin Fields was leading the team in rushing this year. He only had 600 yards. You had 3 guys with 100 plus attempts and only 600 yards rushing. It was crazy.
No, for sure. And I will say too, because this sounds like I'm just sitting here and making Getsy out to be the best guy ever. He does not come without his concerns, for sure. And one of them that I will say is, he wasn't able to make Justin Fields work. And again, I could sit here for hours really and talk about how low I am on Justin Fields. So that doesn't really say a lot to me. It doesn't really say anything. And then,
have accuracy. I mean, you said it twice now, back-to-back years.
Yeah, no, and Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and he made Aaron Rodgers work. And the point I'm trying to make is when you look at the Raiders, they don't have an Aaron Rodgers. They have closer to a Justin Fields and Aiden O'Connell. And, Justin Fields is obviously the exact opposite quarterback, but I'm talking like just in production and what he's done in the NFL. I'm talking more on that scale. But Aiden O'Connell, I don't even know if you want to say upgrade over Justin Fields. You could. But the point I'm trying to make is if he couldn't make Justin Fields work, what makes you think he can make Aiden O'Connell work? And I can understand that argument, and that's definitely an argument I can understand. And for that reason, I'm not going to say that the fit is the best in the world, but what I am trying to say is you should be optimistic, because there's so many reasons to be optimistic about Getsy, and there's really nothing about Getsy that should be like, yo, this guy sucks. Why is he employed? And that's really what I'm trying to say here.
So usually we're lockstep, but I disagree with you on that. Because I would say that in the system that Getsy was really trying to run, and would have rather have had he would have rather taken the execution abilities of Aiden O'Connell to properly read through the progressions and get the ball, make the correct decision, and get the ball where it needed to be, instead of having the playmaking abilities of Justin Fields. I think that would have been better suited to the offense. So that would be a unique situation in which O'Connell probably would still, in fact, be better suited to the style of offense Getsy wants to run than what he was able to run with Fields. Now that's that particular thing. Now, in terms of what he could do with you take the flip side, and as we're talking about this, that realize that Luke Getsy had a hand in developing Jordan Love and getting Jordan Love to the level that he was this year and ready to play. And so that tells me, and I wrote it in my latest article, that it's going to be that what you're looking at in terms of quarterback is going to be somewhere amongst that threshold. You know that you have Aiden O'Connell there, so that at minimum, if you want to tailor your offense to more of a run heavy with the running backs, play action, West Coast passing attack, it's there. You know he can get Devontae open. You know he can take a speedster and make him a hero. You know that if you got a third receiver and a tight end, he's scary. It's lethal. He'll slice you up. Somebody will be open every play as long as your quarterback can get through the progressions and make the read, and your offensive line holds up. And the Raiders' offensive line took a step back from that last year, and there's some pieces that they need to improve and upgrade in order for them to go where they need to go. And that would also bring us to your running back situation, which if you'd asked me this question last year, it would have been a laugh you out of the building kind of thing. But who starts? Does Josh Jacobs come back? Initially, if you'd asked me that before Zamir White got out there and they started calling plays to his abilities, I would have laughed you out of the building and said, of course he comes back and they pay him. But Zeus put up 400 plus yards in 4 games.
Yeah, Zeus was awesome. Zeus stepped up.
Missed a beat, caught the ball out of the backfield, ran. They adjusted the running style to him to make it one cut, and similar to what Getsy was able to do with Deontay Foreman. Now, the one thing that I will say that while you said he made Deontay Foreman look like a hero, you have to remember what Deontay Foreman looked like at Texas. That was Deontay Foreman at Texas, running straight downhill, no cuts, no nothing. And when he looked like a battering ram going through the line, like you literally, I think you've seen it on Lord of the Rings or somewhere. He goes through the line and you just see dudes just getting splatted out of the way as he goes through. It's like, Jesus, he's killing these dudes out here. Just run. They're trying, but it's just not happening.
Yeah, man. So I want to touch on something that you said earlier. It's a very good point, and I missed this point, but I should have connected the dots here, but I didn't. So going back to what I said about MVS, that he led the league in yards per reception in 2020 under Getsy with 20.7 yards per reception, which is just fucking mind-boggling. What you said is he could make a speedster work very well because of that. And the Raiders have that. They have Trey Tucker. They have, really, I don't want to say as close as it gets, but, they have their own version of as close as it gets to that caliber, of a player. And if he can make it work with MVS like that, he can make it work with Trey Tucker like that, who Trey Tucker almost worked like that as is last year. So there's that. And
Pause. Timeout. One key problem on why Trey Tucker did not work out like MVS did this season. And that's because you did not have a quarterback with an arm big enough to take full advantage of his speed.
No, certainly. And actually, I'm glad you said that, because I'm not gonna lie. There's two things I wanted to say, and I was totally blanking on the second one. But you saying that brought me right back on track. So thank you, Phil. The second thing is the talk that I said, that the statement I said when I said it might not be the greatest fit because of the Aiden O'Connell thing. That's probably neither here nor there in reality, because the Raiders probably are going to go after another quarterback, whether the draft or free agency. And, it's going to be quarterback competition. So it's not necessarily to say the guy they bring in is going to take Aiden O'Connell's job, but there's a very good chance that that's neither here nor there. It is a very good chance that Getsy knew that going in, and that was explained to him, and he explained his concerns if he had any. And that was, well stated, and everybody was on the same page with that. So that could easily be neither here nor there.
For sure, and the fact that he had Antonio Pierce's respect, earned his respect, so much so that he told somebody, yeah, he whooped our asses. Said with Tyson Bagent, a D2 quarterback. He's like, come on, he said, come on. Of course, I'm happy to have that dude on board. And then you throw in what he was able to do in Green Bay, what we've seen him do without an offensive line, a receiving core where everybody's 5'11", and a quarterback who suffers from accuracy issues and an inability to locate an open man on a hash mark, which is one thing that we know Aiden O'Connell can hit. If he can throw somewhere, he can throw it to a hash, baby. He can put it wherever you want it on that hash. Got it, like eyes.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm pretty sure that's the reason why most of Raider Nation is very disappointed with this Getsy thing. The Kingsbury thing aside, I know they're disappointed in that. But I'm pretty sure it's because there's this weird, it's so untrue, it's really not even funny, that this weird misconception that Justin Fields is this extremely accurate, reads defense as well. And, he's this guy that, how is he doing so bad? It has to be the coordinators or the coaches or whoever. Justin Fields is not that guy. And I'm not saying he can't be. I'm not saying he doesn't have the potential to be that guy. But he has shown precious little in the NFL his entire career towards being that guy as a passer. Precious little. I mean, he's inaccurate. As you keep saying, there's guys waving their arms all the time, and he's not finding them, which, it happens from play to play with really any quarterback. But this is so frequent. And when he does find them, it's almost always an inaccurate pass. And not almost always, but you know what I'm trying to say in comparison to the rest of the league. I don't know, man. You can only put so much on Getsy. You really can. All he can do is draw up the play. It's up to the quarterback to make it work. And as I said, if the quarterback's not making it work, then your job as the coordinator is to adjust. And he's done that by 3 guys having over 100 rushing attempts. There's really not much more you can do if you're Getsy.
No, and then you develop your tight end blows up, and he starts getting off, and now you know the name is Cole Kmet. You know that he's a quality tight end. He's always open, and he scores a little bit too if you throw a rock his way. And what more can you ask for? You got Big Mike, Wreck-It Ralph looking ass, and he's out there doing whatever he can do. He can do to contribute, whether it be blocking, because let's be honest, when his first couple games were rough. Real. His block, he was just slow. His blocking was, he just wasn't even getting the blocks. And then when he getting put on his back, it was an ugly scene. And then it clicked for him. And then he started looking like the guy you saw on tape. And that was right before he got hurt with the toe thing, I believe. And which was sad because he was putting some things together. And so I hope that he's able to get his health together and keep it to where he can stay on the field, because that's what we need from him the most. Maybe potentially another speedy tight end, bigger, speedier tight end. Yeah, I said speedier, but that would help. That would help as well. But there's a lot of things that they're going to do, and we could sit here and discuss strategy. But they're still finishing off the staff, and talking about finishing off the staff now. apparently Chad Johnson had a ha-ha moment with everybody today and taking pictures and convincing Antonio Pierce to say that he had hired him to the staff when he had not, or technically, I guess, as Chad later clarified on his IG Live, he was getting hired to an organizational position, not one to be on the staff working as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, which is cool. I mean, that's what it is.
I would have, which is maybe perhaps that's the interesting way of saying we got him in the building, so he can come in and do whatever it is that we're going to have him do, because there's a healthy appreciation for the technical expertise of the position that he has and that he can receiving board. Now both he and Tay like to, he calls Terminator, and he likes to go out there and pick his brain and talk what he would do in this situation, and then go back and forth. And with another potentially 6'3", 197-pound receiver with a blazing 4.3 speed from North Carolina, you'd be amazed at what they could do in terms of rounding out the receiving core, because Hunter Renfrow is going to get replaced.
Yeah. And one thing about Chad Johnson is Ocho NoGo, if you will, is he is very involved with things that he's passionate about, relationships wise. Like, if he likes you, he's in your ear trying to help you, and he's trying to mentor you, and he's going to be in the building, so that's big.
Yeah, and he's not going to be able to get he won't be able to get anywhere near a football facility and not have his mouth talk him all the way out there to this field to be running up on somebody and showing him what time it is, and that he still got it at 53 years old.
Yeah, you love it though. You love it.
Hey, he's living his best life and keeping it rolling. You only get one ticket. Enjoy the entire ride.
Yep. No, for sure.
But, and so that was that, and we've talked about that. Now let's move on to the defense. Mike Caldwell, Jacksonville defensive coordinator, was signed today to be the run game coordinator and to coach linebackers. Now that Antonio Pierce has the big job overall, let's say he doesn't have the time that he needs to properly invest in the position group that he so is fond of, let's say, with his dark alley guy Spill and Diablo, trying to get, hopefully they can get Curtis Bolton more out of him, or get perhaps develop Amari Burnett, which you would probably use him in more of a nickel capacity instead of an actual linebacker. I think that if they can pull off a move for somehow get their quarterback of their choosing and T'Vondre Sweat, that this defense, they could go to a permanent 3-4 base, run Tyree out there in a 5-7 or 5 or a 7 technique, anywhere up the line, but 5 or 7, put T'Vondre on the nose, and then stand Max and Malcolm up, or alternate who gets to put the brush with their hand in the dirt, and rock with that.
Yeah, and one guy you didn't mention who's actually he played, a decent amount of snaps, and when he played pretty well, was Luke Masterson.
I'm giving credit down the stretch. He executed, and he proved to be a contributor to this defense as they were gaining steam going down the stretch. Now, I'll be the first person to tell you that I believe that he has earned the right to compete for a job, and that you should still actively look to get better at that position, because you can get bigger, faster, and meaner.
You can, for sure.
And so that's not a knock on him. I just feel that that's a position that you could improve. But as we were talking, Mike Caldwell was specifically brought in to help the run defense. The Raiders' run defense was probably their Achilles heel, but by that same token, they also lined up primarily 6 guys in the box at all times. It was easy to spread them out, get numbers, and if you doubled one of their tackles and managed to get a man block on the end, you had a clear path all the way to the secondary. And that being said, it wasn't a horrible run defense at all, but Jacksonville's was top 10. They were top 10 in rushing attempts. They had the same amount of rushing touchdowns. They were 15 as the Raiders, which was, I think, 2 off the top 10 mark. And his run defense was ninth in yards and attempts. And so he is good for the position that they brought him in, and run game coordinator and linebacker coach Mike Caldwell is exceptional. That was another one of those out of the park hires. I went back and I pulled some numbers on the Ricky Manning Jr. and Gerald Alexander just to let you guys know what type of improvement that we can look to try to achieve from our own secondary. In terms of completion percentage and ranking, the New York Jets finished with the third least passer completion rating, 60. And that was where Ricky Manning Jr. was the DB coach. Yes, he had Sauce, but he had some other guys who played pretty damn well as well. And to finish the year with a 60% completion rating and third in the entire NFL is nothing to sneer at. Pittsburgh was sixth with 60.7, and that's where Gerald Alexander was the safeties coach. And again, obviously, they had Minkah Fitzpatrick, but the secondary has lost, and the safety play, usually it was stuff, has been the Achilles heel of that Pittsburgh defense for a while now. But under Alexander, they managed to right the ship and get back. We move on to passing touchdowns allowed. Again, the Jets were 5th with 19 overall. Las Vegas was 12th with 21, which was pretty damn good. And Pittsburgh was 19th with 23. So we've got the back end between the scheme that Patrick Graham is designing up, and now you have the position coaches so that you can get more out of the talent that you have. I hope and I pray Ricky Manning Jr. can get Jacorian Bennett right and continue to work, and they can continue to work with Brandon Faison and Nate Hobbs, and even with Tiny Loke if I believe he's still got one more year. No, he resigned. He's got to be re-signed. He's a free agent. And then we move on to the last category. Scatterbrain, apologize. Interceptions. The Pittsburgh Steelers had 16 interceptions and were 11th. The New York Giants had 17 and were 8th. The Raiders had 13 and were 16th. So with those key additions at those position groups, your defense stands to get that much better. You stand to get locked down at your corners, locked down over the top, get more opportune plays where your defense is setting its players to make plays on the football, because an explosive play on defense is either one that gets you to the quarterback or one that gets the football turned over to your offense.
Yeah, man. I want to take it a step further of your compliments to what the coaches defensive back coaches we brought in did to the Jets Steelers. First of all, the Jets was so much more than Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner had another good year, but he took notable steps backwards, and that's not because he was worse, but it's not because he didn't have a good year. It's because his rookie year was just so out of this world. But everybody else in that Jets secondary was still very good, and really everybody in the Steelers secondary was really good. But listen, there's another step that you didn't touch on with this. Those offenses were horrible. The Jets offense was horrible. The Steelers offense was horrible. Steelers had big plays with what's his name? George Pickens. They had big plays with Pickens, but Pickens was not a guy he wasn't the guy you pass it to 20 times a game. He was the guy that makes an explosive play and then he gets points that way. But what I'm trying to say is their defense has spent a lot of time
on that one. Go ahead. I'll get to that point in a minute.
But their defenses spent a lot of time on the field because their offenses were just so bad. So it was, I mean, Raiders played both teams, and we saw it. I think the Steelers' offense really wasn't that bad when we played them, but even last year when we played them, last year being 2022, in the cold game, their offense was again very bad, and it's the defense is doing this while being on the field all the time.
No, for sure. Now George Pickens was a lot better. I remember George Pickens being a lot better than being a highlight reel. I think the problem with that was his quarterback just failed to get him the ball. And failed to realize that whenever he dropped back and passed, that the guy he should be looking for instead of Deontay Johnson, Mr. Business Decisions himself, was George Pickens. That was the guy who, and then when he threw it, he needed to throw him an accurate ball that was within 15 yards of him. A lot of the problems with the Pittsburgh offense was accuracy issues as well, because you name your guy, whether it be Mason Rudolph, Trubisky, or Kenny Smallhands Pickett. The balls.
That was no slight on Pickens. That was just because the offense. That was more so saying how their offense went, whether it was because Pickens' fault or quarterback player or whoever. It was that because. I say that because if I say the Steelers' offense was bad, somebody's going to say, well, George Pickens. And, my immediate to shut that down is, well, when George Pickens made game-changing plays, it's just that. He made a game-changing play. It wasn't like he's keeping the drives going and going and going. It's like he made a game-changing play, and it still made the offense get off the field really quick because it was just a big play.
Right. No, fair enough. Fair enough, but like you said, those particular offenses were god awful, and the defenses spent an awful lot of time on the field. But just those tweaks in terms of, because the holes in the Raiders defense was the corners and having to gift everybody 8 to 9 yards because they, for whatever reason, when they started playing better together and the safety play improved, then they started moving to the press and started blitzing more when you had Jack Jones and a corner who was capable of playing on the receiver, because anytime you saw Marcus Peters on the line of scrimmage, he was getting smoked.
Dark times.
Man, that was rough, and I had high hopes, but it just didn't work out. So you can't put desire in there when it ain't there.
No, for sure.
But all in all, you look at that, then you look at the linebacker coach. Rob Leonard did amazing things with this defensive line. You want to talk about unsung heroes, John Jenkins, Adam Butler. Those weren't the guys who were supposed to be starting and carrying the load, and much less putting up points. Defensive tackles, and much less taking fumbles. 40-something yards at the biggest dude on the field at a biscuit short of 340 is running 42 yards down the field to score.
Yeah, man. Raiders defensive tackles were so good. So sad because they didn't get any credit. And everybody's like, well, their defensive tackle unit is weak. Well, Jenkins and Butler are set to be free agents. I assume they're going to bring one, if not both, back. But, man, for all the work that they did, they're so disrespected, that unit.
And truth be told, they're what really made it start going, because their play, once they were able to lock down the middle, everything else fell into play. And for as much as you hear about build from the trenches, build from the inside out, there is no better proof of what happens to the defense when your defensive tackles are solid. Adam Butler and John Jenkins took over the defensive interior and really stepped up in a major way and held down that defense at the point of attack, and allowed Patrick Graham to use his creativity to move guys around and to do other things. Typically where you saw the Raiders get attacked in the run game was at the edges, not straight up the gut, because they were holding it down. And Adam Butler was giving you enough of a pass rush to have to start coming out with dance moves for sacks.
Yeah, you love it. And he had some good ones, man. I love the Dragon Ball Z Kamehameha wave.
Mm-hmm. Especially when he was doing it to Belichick. In the cutting. Shouldn't have cut it. But you look at that, and that as you talk about bringing guys back, he's not going to cost very much. Yes, he's going to earn a significant raise, but you brought him in on the veterans minimum, so even with a significant raise, you might give him $3 million a year.
Oh yeah, and he's worth every penny. Worth every penny of that.
Yeah. Oh, but still friendly on your salary cap. So you bring him in. You'd like to think that you were going to get more out of the rookies that you drafted than what you have, but it is what it is, and they cut bait right away instead of trying to play it out and see what it drag it out. Now, Bilal Nichols is all a free agent this year, so he's going to need to be replaced. While you have, say, you bring Butler back, you have Wilson, you're going to need to add to that defensive tackle line in order to be ready for next year. But that's for, again, kicking the can down the road further down there. You have, but the whole wraps up is the fact that your defensive coaching staff has superstars at every level to help not only Matt Gott set up a quality game-winning defense, but to encourage, to teach, motivate, and put their players in best positions to make them play at their maximum capabilities. And Raiders have talent. They've had talent that hasn't been developed. And one thing that nobody's talking about Antonio Pierce any type of credit for has been the player development that he took the top job. All your role players, all your young players got 10 times better like that.
Yeah, that linebacker unit went from almost worst to first, or it seemed like it would be the worst. And then, I mean, I can't say enough about Spillane and Diablo. And that's big because I talked about this a few weeks ago. Like, I touched on it very quick, but Antonio Pierce is now not the linebackers coach anymore, and somebody's coming in to replace him. But that doesn't mean that Diablo and Spillane automatically unlearn everything that they just learned from Antonio Pierce. They still have all that knowledge that made them this much better players as they go forward. That's just life. You retain information. You retain what you learned. And so you got to imagine that's a plus too, even with Antonio Pierce not there.
Good problems to have. Good problems to have, that you need to find somebody to replace your linebacking coach. And the one good thing that is that Jacksonville believed in drafting linebackers, and good ones, big ones, fast ones that like to hit, ones that do a little bit of everything. And whether they rushed the passer, they blitzed, they did it all. And one of the things that I've enjoyed most about seeing and this particular last year's version of Patrick Graham's defense was the blitzing, the fact that guys were getting home. And I remember in my writing complaining about the lack of finishing. It's like, God, these guys are killing me. They're not. Oh, all of a sudden they started finishing, and oh my goodness, wow, they are finishing all the way through. Like, oh, we skipped about 2 or 3 steps here.
Yeah, man, it was great. The progression was great.
Yeah, and so before we get out of here, I don't know what this offense is going to be. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I don't know what this offense is going to be. I have high hopes. We have high hopes. We're waiting to see what they do, who they bring in, how it turns over, how it all shapes out. But this fucking defense, this defense is about to be nothing nice, boy. They about to be out here busting people's asses. Ill intent, violence.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And the offense, again, I said all that good stuff about Getsy earlier, and again, I want to go back to this. I'm not saying that he's the best thing since sliced bread, and I'm not saying that bringing in Getsy is automatically going to make this offense amazing. What I am saying is there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the offense. There really is.
there's too much to be optimistic about, because no matter what, there it seems ordained that that the quarterback position will be addressed this year.
It does. It does.
How remains to be seen, but it will properly be addressed, because you're not going to see another Jimmy Clone come in here. You're not going to see another guy that's like O'Connell come in here. You're going to see a veteran, and then you're going to see a home run swing. Now, where that home run swing occurs is going to be whether it's the first pitch, first round, or the fourth pitch in the fourth round. One of these times they're going to swing for the fence and go with a quarterback that they think has home run potential and upside. And so I hope that that's how the guy that we think it will be. It may not be. There's to me, the best fits in this year's draft in Getsy's system would either be J5 or Penix.
And same, agreed.
And we can get into how that breaks down in the next episode. So tune in next time. Let these good people know where they can find you and what they'll see you doing next.
As for what you'll see me doing next, you're just gonna have to follow Twitter at Alex Monfreda, Alex Monfreda.
Follow him, and you will be rewarded with boredom. But Phil, you can find me at RaiderRandom.com. I need to get started, write something else, as Hefe will tell you. We will be doing the Unfiltered Truth sometime in the next day or two. We've got a big guest actually coming up next week, but I want to make sure we lock that in before I announce that. But thank you all for tuning in. The AP Cast, Phil, Alex. Yeah, it's AP, but we say it backwards here. And we are out.